This is Willpower.
It's wonderful that I get to be sitting here with Olivia Young to speak to you on the Willpower podcast, all about a life well lived and so many of these new prophecies that have arisen in your life and mine, and really to get some information out to the listeners. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I also remember whenever I see that, I think our birthdays are similar. Like we're both Leos.
Yeah. August 15th.
August 4th.
Yeah. So we're both Leos.
Yeah.
We like that little energy.
But also like the retreat. I don't know, do you retreat? Are you like in your den a little bit? Do you need time? Introvert?
I had this, I'm not introverted at all. I think I'm a wild extrovert, but I just had a year or two ago, everyone's talking about human design, and they were like, oh, you need to wait to decide. And I was like, I don't need to wait to decide. I always just shoot from the hip and I decide right away, and I know, and I am intuitive. And the reality is I need to wait to decide because I have a wave of emotion and feeling, and I typically decide up there.
Right.
And then when I'm down here, I have moments of being like, buyer's remorse or decision-making remorse.
Yeah.
So that was like a really interesting, whether you believe in human design or not, that was a really interesting, thing for me to be like, go to my retreat to my den a little to make some clarifications, let it land and make some decisions.
Good information.
Yeah. And then we had the beautiful opportunity of coming to my original house here in Austin and
oh my gosh,
experiencing the ice bath. So.
That was such a interesting, it was fun. You wouldn't let me leave without doing it. I was really trying to not do it and planned on leaving early. I was going through a breakup that was just broke me open, and when I allowed it to, and sort of the ice bath, it was like we had just moved out and I showed up at this thing and it was a bunch of women I didn't know, and I was like, okay, I gotta go. And you're like, oh no, well, you gotta get in the ice bath first. And you really wouldn't let me have it any other way. So I was the first one to go. You were blasting Rufus du Sol. And it was such a moment of surrender and holding on to so much grief. And it was just this interesting reflection. I'm a writer. And so it was this reflection of really allowing the cold to crack me open, because it was just in that moment of, the only thing you can do is really surrender when you're in that space, or you can clutch or control, but then it's just gonna be worse. And I felt so safe in your space, in your arms in a way, and it was really, it really shifted. It's a part of my book, that chapter of also using cold in those ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the distinctive thing that I remember from plunging with you was not that I forced you to, although listeners, the story ends up okay. So maybe if you're a little nervous, it's okay if you have a good coach to get in the cold. But really feeling like it's not often in my life, it's much more so in the last couple of years since I've gone through all this anxiety and grief and being cracked open, but it hasn't been often in my life that I've had connection to women that feels deep and safe and and I really feel I remember plunging you and having a moment of being oh, this is a woman who's my type of a woman. This is someone that I can feel grounded with and connected to in a way that doesn't always land with other women, right? Whether that's my behavior or theirs, my story or theirs, right? Yeah. And so I really noted that about that experience. So that sits with me.
That's so kind, because I don't know that I knew that, but it was exactly how I felt. Because to feel I was seen, I was safe, I was held, and at a time in my life when I felt none of those things, particularly not by women or men. I was going through this breakup and this idea of sisterhood. I grew up with boys, and I sort of always was this lone wolf who had to learn how to protect herself, and as a result, always felt so unprotected.
Yeah.
And it was just coming into this home, and you just holding court, but not in a way that felt competitive. Because oftentimes Did
I make a cow or serve tea or something?
Yeah. But I think oftentimes I attract women who feel competitive with me because I do have a strong energy. But it wasn't even that you needed to disarm. I think it was just maybe we just both saw each other without knowing why.
Yeah. So beautiful. And a little New York energy.
that too. And hospitality. There was an edge.
There was an edge of that connection for sure. Yeah. We were just speaking before we hit record about some of the trials and tribulations and challenges in your life. And I would love for you to speak to some of the hardest challenges you faced in your life and how they have begun and continue to inform this peak expression of the work you do in the world now.
Wow. So interesting. So I am a one-on-one healer, coach, guide, prior to that, I started a fitness concept in New York City and owned studios. Prior to that, I worked with celebrity chefs and was opening restaurants all over the world. So I've had this really interesting life, or many lives. And I could say like starting a business in New York is really hard, and yet it was a boxing yoga hybrid, and it was all about facing your fight to find your flow, ease through resistance, flow through the fight, because the best fighters are dancers, and we teach what we need to learn. So I was teaching ease and flow through a very hard, challenging 9 rounds in a heavy bag, no mirrors in the space, like hellish environment, to not break, to just really remember to never drop your hands, never give up on yourself. For that, I was in like this very masculine, celebrity chef world where like, I'm fresh meat. I was 23, whatever else. And so I've had many iterations of life and always chose the path less traveled. And there have been hardship along the way, but in a way, my life design, I've chosen hard. And I think I choose hard and then try to find ease through it. And then until, as I shared 5 years ago, hard really found me. So I started this fitness concept. I opened 2 studios. I'd never taught a class before. I signed my first lease. I was just like, fuck it. And it worked, and it was really special.
In a big way, it worked, for sure.
It was really special, and it worked on others. It worked on me. I really just wanted to create the medicine that was helping me heal without knowing what I was healing. I just knew that putting on gloves every day and then finding my yoga mat helped me be both like confident and strong and also open and soft, and it channeled both sides of myself. And where I was in that time, 29, years before that, just practicing these things, I needed to feel strong and soft. And the only way I knew how to feel that way was through actual physicality, feeling my physical body. And I opened my first studio, bootstrapped. Second studio, took on an investor who was my old boss, was the former president of Merrill Lynch. It was like this big time, and 3,000 square feet, heart of Soho, my dream space. 3 weeks before COVID. So I was walking into what I thought was my dream, and what the world told me was a dream. It was like the beautiful outside, the Instagrammable moments, when actually the magic that I created in 1,500 square feet that looked like a dungeon was the intangible that I was seeking, and that actually found me without even like trying. So when the world shut down and this dream that was telling me that I was worthy shut down, I finally had nothing to hide behind. It was like my relationships had failed, my business was, the world was shut down, and yet I trained myself to find ease through resistance, to flow through the fight. And the doors of my studios said, everything you need is inside. So every day I would show up, take a photo to, share it to my Instagram community, and it was the only mirror. Everything else was dark inside. And I thought, I was sharing it, this message to like, look inside, trust yourself, you have what you need. And yet what I was like doing and what I was actually like believing within was so opposite, because I was doing it for the likes. I was doing it to build. I was trying to get somewhere and be someone. And what I didn't realize is that as much as I was sharing that message, higher power, God, spirit, source was telling me, like, look, what the fuck? Look inside, look inside, look inside. And every day.
I'm going to keep saying this to you.
It was every day. It was like, and so, just to fast forward, I was dating someone. It was like COVID, shut down, moved to Miami Beach with my family, moved back to New York, hired a CEO. I was like, we're going to make this digital and franchise. It was like, the world was shut down. And New York was shut down the longest for fitness studios. And, so my like default was, well, I needed something to fill the space. So if it wasn't work, if it wasn't doing, then it was a relationship. So a matchmaker had messaged me, emailed me, sent me this bio of this guy, and I was like, no, too old, this sounds weird. And both like ran a hedge fund and like a spiritual nonprofit, and I was like, perfect, this is me. And by the time I got back to New York, and the city was literally, there was nothing, I gave in. And that sort of was my pattern thus far, like my no, like talking about gut instinct. I'm generator, everything comes from my gut. And my answer was no, but then I sort of start to like wiggle if I get bored or antsy, or I'm looking for someone or something to regulate me. So I ended up starting to date this person, and he, after the first time we were intimate, he said, did something happen to you? And that was what cracked me to very long-winded answer to say the hardest part of my life was in that moment, first the denial. I had no idea. My life looked perfect on the outside. I grew up with all the love, everything I could ever imagine. But I was always running from something. I was fighting something. I was completely disassociated from my life without knowing why, because it was my normal. And so what actually ended up happening was his question sparked my curiosity after my defensiveness, which as soon as I basically opened up and said, someone help me, help me. I was getting a colonic because my body was shut down, frozen. Nothing was working. Relationships, work, body, nothing. And I was sharing with the woman who I, would go see once in a while. And she said, I do this thing. It's no big deal. I leave work and go smoke this toad venom, and it's
no big deal.
Right?
I just
and sometimes I come back. It just it just helps me out. And I was I don't know what she's talking about, but okay. Whatever it was in that moment of okay. And a year they say
you had an intuitive knowing that there was a yes there and you didn't know exactly why.
There was something there, and there was I think that sometimes things start to enter our orbit and we start to open up. So I had a very close friend that was talking about psilocybin. The guy that I was seeing was very involved with MAPS, MDMA, psychedelic research. So it was coming to me. And then when it finally landed in this conversation, very vulnerable space, as I'm getting my body cleaned out, and I heard her, and literally a year prior I was on a date with this very sexy Australian chef, and we're at the best meal I've ever had in my life. And it was a Korean omakase, and we're making out over a 10-course meal. And he's I smoked toad, or something said that, or lick the toad. Yeah. And I looked at him okay, dude, you're weird. So, just to say that when things come to you, you don't always hear them right away until you're ready. Yeah. And so fast forward a year later, this dropped in, and a couple days later, I was in Janis Joplin's old apartment, dropping into toad venom. So, again, the hardest part of my life was...
What's the psychedelic name for the toad venom?
5-MeO-DMT.
Great. Just so everyone who's listening
Yes.
is on the same page, because it's I just did my first combo ceremony 2 or 3 months ago, and
Yes.
I was I'm going to be really open about talking about psychedelics and this landscape of what my mother might consider drugs. That's
Yes.
a barometer. And I was if I'm going to be doing these things in my life, coaching or guiding people, and also integrating them into my life for my healing, then I'm going to speak freely about them. And so that was I'm always my mom's listening to the podcast. She wants to understand what's going on. She's you won't take an SSRI, but you burn some toad into your body? I'm so confused, but it's this is an important thing, I think, an important thing to share with listeners and people, because there's a stigma around it. And the beautiful thing you said to me before we recorded also is I never played with drugs or psychedelics or any kind of healing medicine in any way, shape, or form until you started listening to a little bit of a different calling and realizing there was something greater at play or bigger traumas to heal.
Yeah. It's interesting too, like you said, I went through that whole thing with my parents, with my community, also in New York City, just this idea of drugs or, psychedelics are very different than they were 5 years ago. Even when I started talking about these things, I just had my 5-year anniversary, 6 days ago. But all to say, SSRIs and other modalities have been so normalized. And what I've found with these medicines or magic tools, whatever you want to call them, is an opening that I think is so far beyond anything else that is possible. And they are not a Band-Aid, an SSRI, anything like that. And I have nothing negative to say. I've actually never been on one, so I can't even judge it. But I've heard many people who have been in feedback around them. There's a blur. It's almost like this sort of numbing of sorts. And I see this, people say with psychedelics, it's like a fresh coat of snow over your brain. When I think about SRIs, I think it's it levels everything out so you don't feel anything. And it's actually the opposite. And so much of what my work has become is holding people in between, in the mess and in the process. Because as someone who is a reformed perfectionist, who loves a destination, who can't see, anything but, I find that, and I just realized this morning, just to own it as I'm working it with one of my clients, runs a public company, you know, like really big person, we gravitate towards the end goal because we want our brains want to feel safe grasping onto an answer or a how or a path. What I've learned more than anything, even to continue answering your question, you know, the hardest thing is surrendering all that you know to become all that you are. And that doesn't actually have a definition. We are not meant to have or be attached to a resume or a tax return or a relationship status. And, you know, this is, again, someone who has been so forthright in like doing and has accomplished. And what I know to be true is that happiness doesn't exist in the doing. It's simply just the moments between. It's the ability to just take a breath. Yeah.
Really just like feeling into that. And you were saying to me that you've been working with a large number of people who have navigated in their lives sexual trauma, and really understanding that and having empathy for that and being in that space. And I know that there's been some clients that have shown up that I'm like, whew, that's a big container to hold. And in the most beautiful way, we get to do this work. But just speaking a little bit into that space, as you talk about having this realization, you talk about the intuitive kind of know you had about maybe dating this man, and then you had an intimacy moment where it was that he actually could kind of open the door on that for you. Right? And was there an initial like resistance to it that you were feeling? And then how did the arc of that kind of land into where you can hold people so dearly right now?
So as healer, woman, writer, whatever title, all of it, I have a really messy story, and many people do. What he opened the door to and what I resisted at first, like I wasn't interested in. We had dinner, it like felt awkward. He was much older than me. And I said like, I want to be friends, you know, sort of thing. And he responded with, why can't you just admit that you want to be taken care of? Why are you so afraid of love? And in that moment, what happened internally was, oh, he challenged me. Oh, I'm going to prove him wrong. So he really almost manipulated my core wound of like proving him wrong, being right, feeling seen. And so we started dating, and everything about my body was a no. And yet what I didn't know at the time was I dissociated my whole life. So sex to me, it was never about me. It was never about pleasure. It was just like being there and being a container for someone else to enjoy. That sounds so horrible for anyone listening. And for myself. And
also I think it's important for anyone listening to understand that there is like an eros, and there is an ability to explore your own pleasure and to be in that moment and to be fully present and with someone who wants you to be fully present. And also, this isn't a slight on that gentleman or anyone else that has been in your life, because sometimes if you're sitting in a space and you are a disassociator, you're doing that. That's your own thing. That's your own nervous system response, for sure.
And I think like intimacy is a co-creation, but yet, so what I discovered with him, you know, then walking the path, him asking me this question, the first response was total defense of like, what do you mean? I told you I wasn't ready, which was all true. You know, everything that sort of led to that point, this climax in my life was leading me for someone to shine the light on all of this darkness I'd been carrying. And the first part is denial. What do you mean? And defensiveness. So many women aren't ready, and you know, they just say yes. And that's the truth too. There is a pressure. There is, not to bring it around gender, but this is lifetimes of women sort of just serving in some ways. And so that happened. He asked me, I denied it, and then his question, it was like, he was such a gift. I speak about God a lot, not from a denominational place, just feeling that there is a presence that has kept me here because I've experienced so much pain, that has chosen to give me this journey so I can speak about it and remind others they're not alone. So it was almost like me rejecting him, but him still presenting himself until I could see the wound. And so the denial, the defense, and his question then prompted my own discovery. He was really, you know, the crack where the light entered, or, you know, the wound, whatever. So that was what actually led me to surrender and say, whatever it is, show me the way to find the answers. And as someone who has been practicing yoga since she was 15, like my life was so devoted to some spiritual practice. I wasn't fully bypassed. I was like in my body, you know, conscious, but also if you can't see what you can't see. And my story ends up showing me in so many iterations, the medicine bringing me these different modalities, leading me all the way back to age 6 when I first dissociated from a sexual assault. So I never really lived in my body. And I built this armor, become a fighter, become a perfectionist, become a performer so that I couldn't feel anything because whatever I was carrying was too scary for me to feel.
But isn't it like so interesting for you? I know I'm interrupting, but also
Please.
it's so interesting, and because I feel like there are parts of you and I that there's like a likeness in some ways where we will use our body in a myriad of ways to show that we're using our body, to show how strongly we're showing up, to say, I'm feeling something here. Can you see me sweating and working and moving and dancing and all of it? And there is still within that beautiful, like putting it into the forced somatic experience, there still is another part of us, the inside of the rose that's just like living in there, that's either frozen or closed off or has a mask or whatever. It's just, it's so nuanced in so many ways, right? Because on the outside, you're going to look like, well, of course she's in her body. Look at everything she's doing. She's completely connected to her core. And you're like, my core's right here. I have a 6-pack of abs.
Hello.
What? Of course.
Yeah. And then it's also like, see me. Like, can't you see this? Yeah. And it's, in a way, it's saying that, see me, look at this. I believe it's also us saying to ourselves, like, it is like, see me, look at this, because we have to remember that we're connected, that we're conscious, that we're, and it's so nuanced, as you said, and so layered. And I think for me, when you shut down at such an early age, especially, you know, the subconscious forms between 1 and 7, if you have a traumatic experience in that mix, your attachment, everything that you know is actually, it's not rooted in any truth. So my whole life I was chasing belonging, chasing being, chasing becoming, doing, performing, anything to actually numb all of that which I couldn't feel. And all of that which I couldn't feel was just to protect myself. And again, with sexual trauma, or any trauma, I don't want to just make it about sexual, but particularly sexual trauma, if your earliest experience with trauma or dissociation is being sexualized, the other side of that is then it's very common to sexualize yourself to get attention, because that's how you first got attention. But so it's like, look at me, but don't touch, like, don't come near me, I'll kill you. So you're sort of really shut down in this bubble of like, look, but don't touch. And so what you attract is predatory energy, and it's actually what you fear most. So I'm 39 years old. The last 5 years of my life were really like breaking all of it, right? And then to understand what all of this was. So I mentioned trauma at 6, 12, 13, 15, 17 was left for dead by someone in a shower at a high school party. 21, I was gang raped at college. I was raped by a cab driver. Basically what happened was I became a machine, but I became a machine and a high performer as a result of being completely dehumanized before I could even spell or say that word. So I think that,
like you said, having an energy that isn't even something you're trying to call in, but the energy because of the reflection of the earliest traumas in your life, building upon it and having a frequency for which people are going to be showing up who are going to be detrimental to your development as a human.
Yeah, and in that way it was like so painful because most of the earliest assailants were people that my family trusted and knew. And what happens too as a result of, like, if you don't have memory, or you do, but typically in my experience I didn't have any conscious memory, you blame yourself. So, at 13 when I was sexually assaulted, that was what spurred me to want to completely dissociate from my body, and like a voracious eating disorder to just like rid myself of all of this pain. And so, Gabor Mate says famously, trauma isn't what happened to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result. I lived my life in addiction, in anxiety, in depression. I masked it so well because my addictions were working out. or, you know, a piece of sugar every night, or, you know, one glass of wine, whatever it was. My anxiety and depression were what I lived in, my fear, all of it. It was normal for me. And my anecdote was just like working hard, building, doing, being seen, like being sexy, but I was on an island. And it wasn't until that question, did something happen to you, that led me, and really my question, please somebody help me, that led me down this 5-year journey, as I said, of like breaking and then building, which was at the point where we were meeting. The building was like starting to like come into all of these tools to create the toolkit, to clear my mind, reconnect to my body, and open up to sort of a source greater than me, to become my own belonging. Because for 34 years, I was in the abyss of just attaching to any and everything to make me feel whole.
And then the thing that I talk a lot about this from an internal family systems lens or parts work, but it's just like the reminder to everyone who's listening, and I know that you already know this, is like these pieces of you, these parts of your own human also really served you well, that each one has a superpower and a shadow, right?
Oh
and
my
so
gosh.
It's like made you more powerful, empowered you to do more business, be more in the doing energy. I think I could probably safely say that you and I spent a lot of years of our life in doing energy versus being energy, which is like this total lack of receiving and totally the opposite of what the divine feminine really sits with. So like, how can I receive more and how can I be less in my doing energy? But just from the lens with which I see you, it's always like there's so much strength and there's so much ability and capacity, and I just don't want to overlook those things because you shine so brightly. And also then there's this moment where you're like, oh, this is my fucking star, and also it's like a really big wound in here.
And my
So, like,
shield.
how do you do it?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I loved you mentioned parts work. I've worked with it deeply in IFS work, and it came into my life when it was time to really honor. And then I think you take that on and you really learn to love, like you said, every part, cherish, celebrate, because they brought me here and I need them. And I think for a long time I thought this idea of like turning your back on who you were to become who you are. And I would never turn my back in any part of me. Like the perfectionist, it's a superpower. Like the strength, the fighter in me, the little girl in me that needs a lollipop to feel safe. Like I got one, you know, on my way here to just feel like, you know, held in whatever way. And I think we really are the sum of our parts. And I think it's very common to abandon parts of ourselves out of shame or
Yeah, I hear people say like, I don't want to like have that part of me anymore. I don't like that part of me. I don't want that. And I think this is the divining rod of being like, no, that's not the way. Like, I would like to say that's not the way. The way is like, what does that part really need to hear? Or like, how does it need to be loved?
And in that, I think, again, like I work with high performers, and a lot of this type A energy on the spectrum of any gender really, but you know, from 24 to 64 is my book. And it's not my book, my client roster, which is interesting because I'm working on a book and so much is target marketing and who's your market. And it's like, it's so interesting because I've lived so many millions of lives. Because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have been presented with all of this now. And I really believe that, you know, when God serves you challenge, it's just a compliment. Like you're stronger than the average. Yeah, you are stronger than the average bear. But you're both strong enough to carry it. And when you're ready, you're soft enough to let it go. Because I think that's actually the work is, my work is holding others in process, but then learning how to hold yourself in the process, because it doesn't stop. And I don't believe, you know, you're not healing your whole life. It's not, you can talk about, there's a lot of talk about this stuff, this wellness community, and I'm a yes for all of it, but I believe you become your own ecosystem of wellness. And there are parts that will act up still after doing this work for so long. It's knowing how to hold yourself in that and not bypass it. It's like, we were talking about earlier, everybody wants to know, well, how do I heal? How do I get through, you know, what do I do? And it's actually the opposite. And that's what's it can be so frustrating. It's learning how to not do. Starting how to be okay with everything crumbling. What's the hardest part of your life? It's being the strength in the storm when nothing makes sense any longer, because you've actually changed the way that you see everything, including the way you see yourself.
Yeah, amen to that.
Amen to that.
So should we talk a little bit about the substances, the medicines, the ways that you're playing with some of the clients in this high performance space, and how you're leaning in, and perhaps where they start on the trajectory of working with you? Because I think I want to name some of these tools. Let's call them tools. They're referred to as medicine or drugs or substances or things that create altered states, and reminding all the listeners too that there's many ways that I work with people just in using breath work, let alone, and I'm not using any of like outside substances, but even just using breath work with people can create transformational just change, or really, you've experienced some of my breath, but it's really like people having big moments of processing within the breath space if they have a good coach, if they have someone who's working specifically with styles of breath that will get them out of the prefrontal cortex, and giving people the opportunity. So I think that there's great entrees into this work, whereas some people, I have clients I will work with, and I've been microdosing for 7 years, and I always thought, well, when I'm in my worst peak heightened emotional state, like that's not the time to microdose. And the gentleman from the lab that I knew so well was always like, hey, this is probably the good time. Like COVID's making you really in a fear space. It's probably like a nice time to have a microdosing protocol these couple of weeks. And I was like, no. And then one day it just got so bad that I was like, well, fuck it. I'm going to take a microdose, and I don't know what's going to happen. It probably will send me off the edge. But it was actually the polar opposite to that. It was like, okay, I'm a bit more grounded. I'm a bit more realistic. I'm a bit more focused. I'm a bit more in my body. Yeah. And so I just think I would love to hear from you sort of the stair-stepping process of, how people come to you, where resistance might live, and then like where they jump.
Love this question. I believe that all of these tools are simply a way to sit with yourself. So you can talk about psychedelics or breathwork or many different modalities. Sitting in stillness and honoring how much your mind wants to get up, holding a warrior two, gives you access to a part of yourself that you want to run from. And so, it's interesting when I say, medicine just came to me. Well, yeah, I was working in some sort of space to heal myself for decades prior. So when someone all of a sudden is like, oh yeah, I was thinking about doing ayahuasca in Peru, and I'm like, hold on. Can we hold on? Can you just sit here with me first? Because I know how much it rocked my world, and I was someone who had been doing pretty deep work for a long time. So my process is, I want to be the witness to someone's pain, to honor and allow them to remember their power, and so that they can actually become both the holder of their pain and their power. So I find that people literally find me. I don't find them, they find me. And first it's sort of just one-on-one, because I don't think that you dip into tools or medicines without understanding this person first, because medicine, for example, it opens wholly different everything. And then if you're going home from our space to a relationship, like everything is wide open. Your subconscious is wide open. There's nothing about these things are toys. But either as a beautiful breathwork ceremony or a long meditation, or for me, even a yoga class, I can't talk to someone right after. I need 10, 15 minutes to integrate everything that has just dropped in and dropped out of me. So I think really the work is, first step is slowing down. And noticing the words, the energy, all of it. So when people come into my orbit, this is where we start. And it's simply like being witness to whatever it is. And oftentimes it's not what they're saying, it's what they're not saying. Because we can say whatever we want, but there is an energetic. And then layering in a breath work or a cold plunge, or movement is a big thing in my practice, and I don't necessarily do that with them. But
when you talk about yoga, I think about being like in Hanumanasana for like 2 minutes, and times that I've been like, by the time those couple of minutes are over, it's like a split position. I'm just, for the listeners, if you don't know what it is, it's like a split, it's literally a split position, right? Like you're in a split. So you're holding it, especially if you can't get all the way down on the ground. Like if you're highly flexible, then you can like sit in that and you're like, yeah, I'm a gymnast, no big deal. But most people, you're sitting in Hanumanasana, especially for men, like hips are open, things are all coming through you. It's intense. And there's so many times that I feel like I would have, I don't know if I want to call it catharsis, but emotionality, and things rise and things I've been holding in that area of my body. And it's like, maybe we should start doing like 2 minutes in Hanumanasana, and then I'll work with you.
That, or like back bend, anything that is just literally, so when I say my practice was boxing, was like feeling the strength, remembering not to drop my hands, and into yoga, which is like opening the shoulders, opening the chest cavity, opening the throat. How much do we not say, right? Like every single chakra, opening the hips. So simple, breathwork in those spaces. And then layering in medicine, I think, working with modalities like an MDMA, which is in stage 3, trials for legalization.
We're just going to arm wrestle for how many more years, I hope
Yeah,
not.
I mean, we'll see where it goes.
So all the good stuff is happening again.
Yeah.
With MAPS just made a bunch of statements and stuff, but I still feel it's like a challenging time for it.
It is, and I think it will be an interesting, there's just politics around all of it, but as someone who stepped into that work, it's an incredible way to open your heart, especially if you've lived in a caged off way. It's an incredible way to open up dialogue in relationship. If you've never spoken from pure truth, it's an incredible way to speak to yourself in a space that has to be held and curated with a safe person. And it also, the dark side of that too, I've talked to people like, oh, well, we did MDMA early in a relationship, and it was just like, you're making vows to someone you don't know. Like, these things are,
Or they're like, we just did MDMA, and we
Right.
ran around and danced. And
Right.
there's no judgment if you want to, but there's a very distinct difference between intentional use and recreational use. We can call it therapeutic use and recreational use, whatever we call it. There's such a difference, right?
And I'll tell you, I'm someone who, again, this is just, when you start to clean and clear your vessel, and you make space for whatever needs to come out so that some higher power can come through. Like, I have one beer, I can't drink, I can't really drink caffeine, I can't, I've never used medicine recreationally because I believe it came to my life to save me, to help me. And I have such reverence for these tools that I don't need any dissociative to have, like, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, I really like where I am. And it's not even a control thing. It's, and not to say that one day I won't, or if there's a setting, or if I'm in a relationship, like, I think that would be fun in whatever way. But, I think when you enter into a space of your own life, that you're seeking a connection, deeper connection to other, but also to yourself, there's a desire for truth. And it's not another tool like to make you feel better. It's a tool to understand yourself. So every single thing in my toolkit is either me as a tool to bear witness to, or bringing in a tool so that you can bear witness to yourself. Because all of these things, I believe, are just creating a reflection of you. And so some things bring out deeper things, which is so helpful when it comes to psychedelics, or unbelievable. I would not be where I am today without that work. And I'll tell you that I can't even microdose because it takes me macrodose. So how my body now metabolizes anything, I'm a no for medicine. I haven't taken probably anything in about 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sensitive to microdosing, but I also find that the work, I don't know, you started with 5-MeO DMT, that the work that I've seen that feels really pivotal to me is working with mushrooms and working with MDMA, because there is just this switch off of the fear center of the human that's in front of me enough, in a way that, of course, everyone's still cognizant and aware and there, but like as a nervous system, I've been watching nervous systems for 10 plus years and being like, wow, this is so interesting. As a nervous system in space, forget what the human looks like and sounds like, was seeing how their body functions, that there's like a really palpable moment when someone is like, maybe not physically exhaling, but having the land.
I mean, and my experience, like, I've done 5-MeO, that was once. 5-MeO DMT is this molecule. It's basically, it's the same molecule your brain secretes before you die. It's what's also found in ayahuasca, but it's just a 20-minute psychoactive experience. It's so interesting, and I don't recommend any of this. I'm not here to recommend it, but I'll tell you that that was why that was first for me. And I would never, ever recommend that being first.
Do you think it was like, because it's 20 minutes, so that felt like manageable?
It did. I didn't have context. When I'm offered a bib to run a marathon, I say yes the day before. If you say like if I'm a yes or I'm a no. If I have to think about it, I'll talk myself out of it. But why it was so perfect for me was because my ego was so built on from living for 34 years dissociated, that I needed something to blow through me completely. And what happened was through that, I brought up like people, places, things, like clearing my energy centers. It was so incredible, emotional, cathartic. Nothing made sense.
You had memories come back. You had all these things happen or show up for you.
Yeah, memories, but more people, places, things, not connected to anything. So what it did was it brought it all up in like a cloud of smoke with no context. And so naturally, as a seeker, I was just like completely blown open, but I didn't know what anything meant.
Yeah, you're
And
like, what's on the table here?
It was like, whoa. And it's funny, someone's like, I blow out my hair. I like walked up 7th Avenue to like go see the toad. And someone said, and I was just like, if I want the toad to show up
You're
for me.
getting fancy for the toad.
I was going to show up for the toad.
Totally.
And like 2 days before, I kept seeing this vision of Joaquin Phoenix, and the shaman opens the door and he is a spitting image of Joaquin Phoenix. Like it was every part of it. That's kind of my journey in this book that I'm writing. It's really dark and it's really violent, and it's also, every part of it is like the Harry Potter Hedwig's theme in the background. Every part is magical. And I want to be able to be someone who has died so many times and has lived to tell the tale, that can still say that magic exists, that love is the only thing that matters, and that there's life after death. Like in a sense of not, other world, but I've seen my body being picked up out of the back of an alley. I was raped by a cab driver. Every part of my physicality was taken.
And when you talk about seeing that, it's like the meta experience of you being sort of out of body enough that you're kind of witnessing yourself in the moment of some of the biggest traumas your body's ever experienced.
And there was almost like a door of like, is it time or is it not?
Right.
Because I also think in those situations we're often offered a choice, and I do believe in other powers sort of intervening and saying no, like it's not time. And also as someone who on the outside looked like she had it all together, and then your opening question, your hardest part was realizing that everything that I thought was true wasn't. Everything that I held and so in such high regard was taken. And then all of the, gaslighting and denial and everything that comes with that, and learning to become my own sovereign love, belonging. When these things not just happen, but then are brought up and you become witness to them, you, in many ways, lose all belonging, lose all sense of self, lose all sense of sovereignty. Like your body betrays you too, and in many, like it protects you, but also you hate your body because it's experienced all of this. So coming home to this vessel, back to the tools, it's using all of these molecules, modalities, movement, breathwork, vibration on every chakra center to bring up and out these emotions, this energy that's been latent in your system from people who have put themselves on you and in you in so many different ways, to, again, clean and clear the vessel, to return back home to this body that carries you, doesn't define you, but it holds you.
Yeah.
And to learn to fall in love with yourself again, not just physically, emotionally, spiritually, not attaching to someone else to give you worth or purpose or a job or a definition of self. Like people ask me all the time, well, what are you, a healer? And I'm a human. I'm a French trained chef. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a doctor. I'm
all the
so many things.
Yeah.
And I'm no thing.
Yeah.
I'm literally just Olivia. I'm Olivia. And I'm alive, and I'm only alive because I faced all of the darkness that I didn't even know existed within me and around me as a result.
Yeah.
And I chose to really build a mosaic out of all of the mess. Because I think when you sort of traverse, like when you go to those depths and then you soar to those heights, you feel very alone. Because no one could protect me. And then at the end of the day too, no one could save me but me. And that's fucking hero's journey.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think it's beautiful. I'm going to honor all that as well.
Yeah.
And I also think this calling of like context being so important is even more important now than ever before, right? We talk about disassociation, and I think the people I've known in my life that are like the most disassociated are like, oh, I'm going to go to the ketamine clinic. And I'm like, oh, of course you are, because it's just more of the same.
Candy
it's
store.
Like, it's like, how do you find the medicine, the tool that's really right for your body, for your nervous system, for your psyche, for your, and I think when you said, I don't recommend, again, we're not here to recommend that anybody has to do anything. Your body, your choice. And also, I see people, especially sometimes you hear the rumblings around Austin with it being such a wellness community and heavily interwoven with psychedelics communities, like people saying, oh, I did my 12th ayahuasca journey this year, or like, and I'm always, I'm an advocate for it, and I think that there can be some goodness that comes out of it, but like it's a tool that does a specific thing. It's like a can opener opens a can, and I'm not quite sure there's ever been a time, I know there's never a time that I've said to someone who's asking, hey, I'm gonna go do this big ayahuasca thing, is it, like, that's my number, I've never done anything before, so I'm off for 5 days of drinking ayahuasca, and I'm like, I don't feel like it's a great place to start contextually. Again, I'm nothing against that medicine, and I'll just share a really brief story, which is, I never thought, I was like, I'm never called to Aya. I just didn't feel like I would be participating or partaking in it, and I just didn't have, you hear all the stories about people throwing up and stuff when you're younger or whatever, and I was like, doesn't really call to me, but I really wanted to work in medicine spaces a lot with breath and with cold, right? And people are always like, you're putting people in ice baths while they're high, and I'm like, no, putting people in ice baths in between like a weekend to help with recovery and parasympathetic rebounding and oxytocin bonding of a group and things like that. But I really wanted to continue to work my way into some medicine spaces, and of course, at some point in my navigating all of that, there was like a friend of mine who called. It was like, oh my goodness, there's a helper that was doing this, supporting a shaman who's doing a big Aya ceremony, but she's a female and she was also doing breathwork, but she's pregnant. They just put her on bed rest, and it's in a week. And I was like, oh, this is a funny joke.
Yes.
Aya, like
right.
grandmother medicine is like, oh,
she called.
I'm gonna get you anyway. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. I had a big, this is very abnormal that you would go and have never done the medicine before, and that you'd be in service as well. And I was like, had a call with the shaman, and I was like, let me tell you how it's going to be. Like, this is just like the funny nuance of like not knowing, right? I was like, let me tell you how it's going to be. I need to have the right to refuse that when I show up to the space, if I feel like anything feels like out of the ordinary or it's a hard no for me, that I can walk out the door. Like, I had all of these like,
your rules.
yeah, like I was like, these are my rules, these are my guidelines, this is what it has to be like. And we had a whole conversation, and she was like very gracious, and she was just like, I feel like the energetic connection is great. I think it's going to be fine. I'm sure on the inside she was like laughing a bit, at my newness to that connection and all. And then of course I got there, and it was like the complete draw in, right? And it was like very much so in the world of ayahuasca, when you're in service, as you know, it's like you don't go and sit service or care for people and not be in the medicine, because there is an energetic connection. So you will be taking some. Yeah. And I was so resistant. And I remember the first night went up and was like, you can let the shaman decide, or you can ask for whatever amount you want. And I was like, what's the least you can give me? It was just like so New York, so just like landing in it. More. But I was like so resistant, right? And it's like when you book the gig, or when you decide to go on the whatever journey, or when you find the contextual answer for what medicine is right for you. And I have this conversation 2-3 calls prior into working with people, and I'm sure you do as well. The journey kind of starts there, where you're like, okay, I'm feeling all the nuance of this already. Yeah, and it's about taking the hands off the wheel. So I'm happy for you to speak into some of that, but also just contextually, how you are working with someone to decide maybe where they start is, I think is a critical element of so we see all types of shit today of people playing with medicine in, I'm not here to judge them, but in good and bad ways.
I feel like I've evolved so much because I was that person who wanted the control and to know, and like the structure, how this is going to go. And it's sort of how I show up to life now. Like the plan is, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face. That's what Mike Tyson says. It's like,
I love that you have all this history of fighting references you can just bring into the
it's so real.
Into the arena.
Yeah. And as someone who knows, but was on the other, like more, like not even, it was more just like, whatever it is, whatever I need, I'll hire this person or someone to tell me, like, and now when people come to me and everything, I noticed a change in myself when I didn't want the answers. I sort of became the reflection of whatever was being shown to me, and the ability to listen, like, goes back to what's not being said. So people come to me, they want the answer, they want the control, and yet I think people are attracted to work with me because I hold a space that knowingly doesn't provide that. And that whatever tool is being called in is, and it could be, hey, go get your vibrator and go literally use the vibration on every energy set. This was a big part of my journey, using vibration on my throat. It pulled up a repressed memory of a name of a sexual assault from college, like stone cold sober, of like re-embodying, you know. So to say, when people enter my orbit, there's a disarming that has to happen, because without it, there's no thing to bear witness to except resistance. And as someone who, all I've wanted my whole life is the answer, or to prove, or to do, and then to be acknowledged, and then to be seen, and with so much fear of not being worthy. Now I find that the best way for me to hold space for anyone is to just remind them of what they already know, because when they were born into this, and I've studied Andean shamanism, everything is, no matter what, you know, part of Andean shamanism is like, when we are born, we are dropped into this idea of this Inca seed, and all of us have this path and this purpose. And it's different than Dharma. It is you. It's not even your purpose, it is you. And just the fact that, you know, the sheer fact that we're here is the gift. And we forget that. And then things happen, and they promote us to want answers, and why did this happen, or how can I fix this? And the greatest gift of this experience is simply being alive. It's returning to the breath. And I think the tools are helpful because they slow everything down to remind you of your existence, of your capacity, of your uniqueness, like the gift that is you. And so back to your question of where do you start, I start at the beginning. And the beginning is right where you are. And so if it comes to me with like, oh my God, what do I need? It's like allowing everything to sort of be a little gentler, softer. And it's interesting too, when older men come through, and we're all just human. It doesn't matter how old you are, how much you've built, what gender, age, sex, race, socioeconomic, we all just want to be witnessed. And the witnessing that actually I believe is most profound and is most in lack is the witnessing of the pain. Because we want to skip that part and go to the good, like the fix.
The accolades.
The accolade, or like, how do I, or what do I take so I can feel, and
better, faster, so I can get back to what I'm doing.
And I believe the secret is the clearing of everything that is the space between what we have and what we want is both filled with our excuses and what we're not yet willing to see. And in all of that actually is the magic. All of the magic I've experienced is what the world would look at as mess.
I feel that deeply.
And really what it is the most profound experiences I've ever had were in my unbecoming. And if anyone is listening that is going through it or looking for an answer, I could tell you to look within. Everything that you need is inside. I could tell you to go do plant medicine. I could tell you a million things. What I can't tell you is what you already know. And makes me want to cry, the pain that you're experiencing in the separation, bear witness to that.
Yeah.
Because underneath that suffering is all of the joy, all of the love that you are ever capable of. And it never left you. You just don't have access to it yet because it's being covered up by so much hurt. And that's the magic.
Yeah, I feel that really deeply, both from a personal level and also a professional level, when I'm like recognizing in the reflection of my own shit as well, when someone comes to me and is like, this is unbearable pain, that I can see that there is an element of their body and themselves that is creating that over and over and over again, and repeating it. And that it's the lesson. And then I say, fuck, how long have I been repeating my pains? You know? And so it's really the lean into that. And I love the way that you just explained it all, like the leaning into the mess where the magic actually is.
Yeah.
And it's fucking scary. And it feels, we all are like, we're separate from everybody. No one's alive. It's like what I mentioned earlier to you off camera, that I had interviewed Peter Crone recently, and I was like, I probably already know the answer to this question, but I need to hear you tell me. You've worked with some of the most prolific names in, professional sports and famous people and billionaires and all these things. And I just want to know, like, are they dealing with the same problems that we are?
Worse.
Are they having the same pain?
Yeah.
And he's like, no one can get happy. Everyone's got their things. It doesn't matter how much money in the bank. Sure, there's a level of ease when you have a chef and a personal trainer, but beyond that, like, it's all the same shit. There's only one thing, and we are all it, know? So it's like, how do we, the remembering of the fact that you and I are alike. We already feel like that because we're like sisters from another mister, but even the other person across the aisle is just the same as us.
And I think, and thank you for saying that, in a world that feels so separate, distant, like what's going on in our world today, I can't help but feel so sensitive to it because our universe is so desensitized that there are killings and murders and shootings and the way that we just move on from them because it's like just another day, or there's a morning, or it's so painful. And as someone who, I've spent so much time learning how to come back to the sensitivities that are actually superpowers. If we could all return to that we are deeply feeling people. We are deeply nuanced and different, and yet, as you said, we are all the same. And when you say too, your humanity is like so palpable. I feel so privileged. I feel so privileged to sit with you. And I'm reminded, as I mentioned, I'm a writer. Fundamentally, when people ask me what I really am, I've learned how to understand myself through words. Not through movement, through many different ways, but the way that this has all really come through me is through words.
Yeah.
And so, I write a Substack, I'm working on a book, but I oftentimes have to pause and I'm like, this is so messy. I'm a healer, I hold space for people, and yet I'm witness to my own healing. And because I'm so attuned, I write every 3 to 5 days, 3,000 words, intense Substacks, because I'm hyper focused on every sign I see, every thing in my body, and it actually shows the healing journey in real time.
Yeah.
Not as the journey that that's a loaded word phrase, healing journey, but I mention that because oftentimes I second guess, like, you're showing all of this mess and all of this nuance, and yet you're holding space for others. And what you just reminded me is,
that's the only fucking way you can do it.
It's the only way.
And the only way. You gotta have both.
You gotta, and this idea of perfectionism, or someone knows, or even Peter, I can imagine as a human being on this earth too, like he has his own shit.
Of course.
Right? And I think what's really cool is when you can own that about yourself and see it in others and not judge it, just become the observer to yourself and others, you take back your humanness. Not better, you're not worse. There is no better or worse. It's just now. It just is.
Yeah. And just to speak to your writing a bit, like everything I've ever read from you, and this is why I'm so excited about the book, which I want you to talk about briefly before we wrap, is it is this is such an awesome word or thing to say, but it's like there is a different channel that you bring to take the information and to create words that showcase exactly what's going on in a way that's like will land with people, that has more color and character and texture, so that it's like, fuck yeah, that. And that's like a really beautiful skill to have as a writer. And it's something that I think is so important for people to get their hands on the things that you are writing, so they can see like full spectrum of everything. And also, why the book, as it's on its way out and you're birthing it, is going to be so important. So you tell us a little bit just about the book and the Substack, like if people want to read more about you and the things that you're sharing, where can they do that?
A couple months just before I met you, I had a psychedelic experience, like a journey, and I went full into labor, like the most intense, legs spread wide open, energetic labor, like wailing. My body was waking up, and the message that came through was, if you want to bring life to this world, you have to bring yourself back to life. And that was what spawned me into this. And then I had a dream a couple weeks later. I just recently wrote this on my Substack, so you can go read it. But I had a dream a couple weeks later that was a message. Someone said to me, I was like, there's something missing. And the message was, you have to let the placenta go. And so that was really the message of everything I was attaching to, I had to release. And I share that because when you say the texture of my words, it's sort of like being able to contextualize these unique experiences to someone who's reading it to realize like, oh, maybe I'm not alive. Maybe if I want to bring life to this world, maybe. So that message to me was about bringing work to this world because I was so detached. And so when I found this ability to write and to share through recipes, through movement, through story, whatever else, it's like how we feed ourselves, how we move ourselves, how we nourish ourselves, how we connect, intimacy. I honored and recognized this gift I was given that was words. And everyone's a writer. And I think that was actually why I used to dismiss myself as one, because what do you mean? It's just words, everyone can write. But like, I finally own that's not necessarily true. Just like I'm not a mathematician, we're good. Being uniquely who you are, returning to that part of yourself. So the book that I am working on it was a journey. It started as the story, as I was living the story. And then it became both the story and the tools, how I brought myself back to life. And my hope in everything that I write is that no matter how wacky, going into labor or smoking toad venom or so many different stories, is that people see themselves through my story. People can relate to the humanness, the raw, the real, the messy, the sexy, all of it, and remember that they're not alone in theirs. Because if we could find a way to humanize ourselves and to find a connection instead of the disconnection, we would be in a much different place. And this idea of returning to love, returning to self, when you learn to hold yourself in these feelings, you can witness other people. When you learn that love is the universal force, there is nothing else. It's not religion. It's not, it's just magic. And magic brought us to this world. So magic will keep us here and connect us back together if we allow for it. But it isn't the thing, it's actually the space between. So my writing as a process is speaking to the space between, the messy in between, and allowing it to land for me and to my audience. That's the book. So it's called Everything You Need Is Inside. In the interim, in the publishing process, I write a Substack every 3 to 5 days. And it's also, this was such a God gift. Like, I never really looked at what it was. I just write because that's what I do. My open rate is near 60%, which is crazy. And I think that's probably the reminder, an external reminder I needed to keep doing this.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I hold space, I do this work, I write, I witness other people in their unbecoming, because I believe that's where you actually learn how to be who you are.
Yeah. So beautiful. Such an eloquent queen that you are. For real.
It's such a reflection. Thank you.
Do you, will you let the people know where they can find you?
Yes. You can find me on Substack. It's oliviayoung.substack.com. On Instagram, it's @liveyoung. It's sort of this other thing. I was gifted this name, Olivia Young, and I don't go by Liv. I believe Live Young is the idea of like learning yourself to love yourself. And so when I realized that was my name, it was like all this stuff was happening, and I feel really privileged to hold that name. So Instagram @liveyoung, Substack.
And I'm going to put all the links, and then when this book comes out, it's going to be all over my social.
Yeah, beautiful. And if you're looking or interested in working with me, my website is liveyoung.co.
Cool.
So you can send me a message and we can have a chat.
Okay. So beautiful to have you here. Thank you so much for spending time.
My honor.